battering Florida, bringing more wind, rain, and damage.
The storm now downgraded to a Category 1 storm, but the danger is not over yet.
We're still out here on the along the Gulf, and I'll tell you, the backside of this is the backside of the storm.
It is whipping off of there now. Whoa, this is pretty intense.
Wherever Hurricane Irma goes, we'll be there first.
I want everybody to survive this storm. As you know, we can't send out first responders to save you, so everybody needs to be cautious.
President Trump vowing to head to Florida in the wake of Hurricane Irma.
We're going to Florida very soon. I mean, the bad news is that this is some big monster, but I think we're very well coordinated.
Hurricane Irma packing a powerful punch, still punishing Florida at this hour as it climbs up the coast.
All right, the monster storm's violent fury unleashing a devastating strike, forcing the Sunshine State to go dark, and that's the way it is right now with the sun down, leaving millions, by the way, without power at this hour, up to 4 million.
Irma's lengthy assault, packed with winds over 100 miles per hour, toppled construction cranes, turned streets into raging rivers, and ripping off roofs. A lot of them.
5 seconds.
Wow, they caught that on camera. The massive storm blamed for at least 5 deaths, including 2 police officers down in Florida as Hurricane Irma surges north. Its path of destruction now sparking rapidly rising life-threatening water levels, storm surges that could climb up to 15 feet.
10 to 15 feet of storm surge. You know, I don't know how anybody survives that. Pray. I don't see prayer as a last resort. It should always be a first resort.
We're literally pushing up against the window to prevent it from possibly breaking in.
Okay, as Irma's multi-day siege rages on, we've got live team coverage across Florida, from Miami all the way north to Tampa.
Most of the state now waiting for the sun to come up so we can see the damage. In Naples, Florida, people got hammered and some are still underwater. 90% of the people there are waking up without electricity. Griff Jenkins has battery power and he joins us live with the breaking details unfolding at this hour from Naples. Griff?
Yeah.
Well, I said he had battery power, but apparently there was a problem with the satellite. We'll try to get back to him in just a minute.
Right. There is, of course, the fact that he could be giving us a silent treatment. We won't find out till after the show. Go ahead.
Griff is there in Naples, but we also have Brian Yunis. He's in Coral Way, which is in the Miami area. I think we're going to check in with him now. Good morning.
Good morning. Coral Way is one of the many suburbs in Miami just outside of downtown dealing with pitch black out conditions. Take a look once we take off this light, what it's like out here. You see that? That is what people are dealing with right now. And this is also what people are dealing with. Down trees. You look over here. This is also on my left over here, Guy. We've got down power lights and power lines that go all the way there, blocking traffic. And this is why there is a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. curfew overnight, because, frankly, it's dangerous. As a matter of fact, here it is. Here's a car right now. Watch out. This is what's happening. People are now leaving shelters and finally trying to get home, and they're driving in these kinds of conditions. Before this, we saw a bus that was meant to go pick up utility workers. Remember, 43% of Floridians right now are without power. There are 17,000 utility workers from outside this area that need to start working on these things. One bus got stuck in this very intersection right now, so it's a problem that's all over the place. Before that, obviously, this storm in Miami, although the eye was 130 miles away, we felt it really hard, 90 to 100 mile an hour gusts in some places. We had panels flying off of buildings. The tallest building in Miami, while we were reporting just last night, there was giant 6-foot glass panels flying off of the building and onto the ground, a very dangerous situation. There was also flooding in Brickell and in downtown from the storm surge, which has since receded. And on top of all of that, guys, We also have, unfortunately, looters. Video of looters in a Foot Locker, unbelievably, taking advantage of this situation. And then but the Miami Police Department has been making patrols in this neighborhood and in all neighborhoods to make sure that the 600,000 plus Miami-Dade citizens here who evacuated because of the storm aren't taken advantage of while their homes are vacant. So there have been tons of patrols, and the Miami Police Department sending out a tweet with the photos of some of the looters that they caught and arrested, some 28 already, and they're warning others that they're coming after you and looking for you if you plan on taking advantage of the storm victims. But again, people are dying to get home. We understand that. But their rescue crews, the recovery crews here in terms of debris and the cleanup crews have yet to do their work because it's been pitch black and it's only been a few hours since those winds have come down. And so that's the situation here in neighborhoods all throughout South Florida. As I look at another vehicle trying to get past, it's just not safe, guys.
Hey, Brian, what was the bus stuck on? Were they just concerned because it was a down power line? What was the bus stuck on?
So look, the bus was trying to get to Fort Lauderdale to pick up utility workers, and he was stuck on this. I mean, this traffic light, which fell. Yeah. And the reason why it's on the ground is because it got entangled in that. You can see from my flashlight. And so the bus, trying to figure out a way out of this neighborhood, got entangled on that. And so you could imagine, look, even the buses that are trying to actually restore power are the ones that are also getting stuck. So that's what we're dealing with here, guys.
It's just scary because you don't know what lines to pick up. You don't want to get electrocuted while you're trying to...
Can't see anything.
You can't.
You
You're
can't.
right. How about those looters? Were any of them arrested?
A couple dozen.
Yeah, 28 of them were.
Yeah.
We had at least 28 looters. In terms of the Foot Locker, I'm unsure if any from that video were actually arrested.
Got it. Well, their faces are on camera, so police officers will know who they are.
All right.
Ridiculous.
Thank you very much, Brian. Now let's move on. Matt Finn picks up our live team coverage in St. Pete Beach on the west side of the great state of Florida. Matt?
Yeah, there's still tropical storm force winds here. Right now, I'm standing in the courtyard of a very sturdy hotel, but if I were to step outside of this courtyard, you would be able to see the violent whipping winds that are still happening right now and very strong soaking rain. There are still a lot of downed lines around here, tens of thousands without power. The sun is not up, so we are not able to see or survey the damage, but the hotel owner here sent me some pictures overnight of a lot of his fellow business owners who have seen some damage at hotels and businesses in this area. And as the sun comes up and high tide approaches, which we are inching closer to that, we are expecting a storm surge combined with the high tide, so we could expect to see water rise 2 to 4 feet, but not near that 6 to 9 inches that was potentially could have happened, which would have been catastrophic in this area. You know, we always report on bad news, but fortunately right now at this hour, no catastrophic damage in this area, no terrible flooding here at St. Pete. Overnight, tens of thousands of people in this area lost power, and unfortunately some utility companies had to stop their recovery efforts because they say it was just too dangerous for their guys to be out here. Police also telling us that once the winds hit 40 miles an hour here, which that happened yesterday, it was just too dangerous for them to send out their officers and their rescuers, and it seems like we're definitely seeing winds over 40 miles an hour right now. So unfortunately, anybody who's dialing 911 or seeking help might not receive it. As the sun comes up in this area, I'm sure we'll be able to show you guys much more in the 7 o'clock hour here from St. Pete Beach. Back to you in New York.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt.
All right. Meanwhile, 8 minutes now after the top of the hour.
Jillian Miele, she started our coverage last week down in Miami Beach, and now she is in Tampa. Jillian, how are things looking there? They were expecting a lot of flooding. Do you see any of that?
I will say, you know, we're not seeing a ton of flooding. Right here, we've got a little bit of, localized street flooding on the corner. It's not significant. I would agree with what Matt Finn is saying, but we have seen a little bit of it. We've been driving around throughout the morning. We are right now along Bayshore Boulevard. We were over on Davis Island earlier this morning. We have not seen any homes damaged by flooding. I'm not saying that that's the case everywhere. I'm just telling you what we've seen so far this morning, but I'll tell you what we're seeing a lot of. You're seeing a lot of downed trees throughout the area. You're seeing a lot of debris, a lot of downed palm trees. You drive up a street and then all of a sudden you have to stop and turn around because this is the situation. So I think a lot of people are going to wake up in Tampa feeling a bit relieved. We did not have, the center, that what was left anyway of the eye of that storm that did not hit here in Tampa last night. So I think a lot of people are feeling very good about that. But still, the sun's not up here yet. So people are going to be coming out as the morning goes on to try and look at the damage either at their home or on their street. And the thing is, we actually have seen so many police officers driving up and down this street. Every time a new one drives by, they stop and they ask us if we're okay. So police are out there trying to make sure that everybody is safe. It's still not safe to come outside your home just yet, guys.
That's right. All right, Jillian, thank you very much. And also because so many homes are unprotected. So many folks are out of town, they got to make sure that nobody goes in and tries to take something.
What strikes me about Tampa is when you drive across those bridges, the water almost looks at the bridge line. I always said to myself, anytime there's a storm, people must get nervous.
It's just a few feet above sea level. And Janice Dean, that was the worry. As the coast, the west coast of the storm went up the coast, would the storm surge overwhelm them?
Right, and we're still dealing with storm surge in Jacksonville. They set a storm surge record over 4 feet. So the east coast of Florida is feeling this as well. I just want to point out, normally I wouldn't want to tell you about this. We have another tropical system. This is a hurricane, and we don't quite know where it's going to go. So this will be the next one we watch. This is Jose, and as you can see, it meanders for the next 5 days. But some of the tropical models are showing, perhaps an east coast impact. Landfalls yesterday around 9:10, Cujo Key, and then we had another landfall, Marco Island, 115 mile per hour sustained winds. That was a major hurricane. Some of the wind gusts in Naples, 142 miles per hour. I mean, devastation there in the Naples area. And Marco Island, 130 mile per hour sustained wind, or rather gusts. Tornado threat will be ongoing today because of the right-hand side of this storm. We've seen many tornado-warned storms yesterday and now today for North Florida. We had an earlier tornado-warned storm north of Jacksonville, but that tornado threat is going to be ongoing through Georgia and the Carolinas. So widespread effects, even though this storm is weakening, still a Category 1 moving across North Florida, but the effects will be felt well past the center of this storm. Tropical storm force winds extending 220 miles from the center of this storm, and hurricane force winds likely 80 miles from the center. And you can see we're still going to be dealing with this into Tuesday, and then it becomes a remnant low and just kind of sits and spins across the Tennessee River Valley. There's the radar right now. You can see the core of the strongest winds right here. And then we also have the offshore flow. So Tampa, you're still going to get the potential for heavy rain and that storm surge moving in. It won't be the incredible storm surge amounts that we were predicting yesterday, but still a very vulnerable coastline and the potential for, water levels to rise. Future radar shows this storm system moving north and westward into Atlanta, Georgia. For the first time in history, Atlanta, Georgia is under a tropical storm warning. That's incredible. And we could actually see the potential for hurricane force winds moving into parts of Georgia and the Carolinas. There are your rainfall totals. Obviously, this is not a Harvey story like we saw in Houston, but still incredible rainfall totals of over a foot of rain, the potential for upwards of 4 to 6 inches. So flash flooding is going to be a concern throughout the day. And then Georgia and, of course, the Carolinas watching the threat for tornadoes and the storm surge threat as well, not only for the West Coast, but the East Coast, because this storm is so large, guys. We're going to be watching it throughout the day today as it continues to weaken, but still widespread impacts all along the southeast coastline.
Pretty much everybody who's awake right now in the eastern third of the United States is going to wind up with
And I read 45% of the state of Florida has no power.
How long does that normally take for them to turn that back on? A week, or
it could be very,
extent of the damage.
Places like the Keys inundated with rainfall, it could take months.
Indeed. All right, Janice, thank you very much.
We have lots of viewers in the state of Georgia that are waking up. So a lot of rain. You can expect a lot of rain today. Anything worse? Anything else that we need to, Janice?
No.
Lots of rain. For folks in it. So keep us posted.
Regarding Florida Power and Light, which has got so many subscribers and customers out of electricity this morning, we're going to have somebody who is either their public information officer or a vice president with us in about 20 minutes so they can give us the lowdown.
Really. Meanwhile, 13 minutes now after the hour, we went to Griff Jenkins a little bit earlier and a shot froze in Naples, Florida. And Griff, are you able to hear us now?
I can hear you, Brian. I'd never give you the silent treatment. And, if I could just add on, Ainsley's asking about, how long it's going to take. The CEO of Florida Power and Light said a few days ago when we were in Miami in anticipation of this event, said this is likely going to be the most difficult power restoration in the country. Florida Power and Light is the third largest utility. And here in Naples, Collier County Emergency Management telling us 90% of this area has no power. The streets are impassable. Power lines, palm trees, pools of standing water. There are rising floodwaters, although the storm surge seems to be only a foot or two based on our limited ability to assess it. But it is very much a serious issue, a catastrophically dangerous situation to wake up now and get into. The curfew here in Naples has just lifted. It was 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. But as people are waking up, the authorities, guys, are telling people to stay sheltered in your place. And if you were evacuated, absolutely do not try and get on these roads and get back to your property to assess it, because it's a dangerous situation right now.
All right. Thanks so much, Griff. We'll see. And a lot of those people in Naples, they pretty much were hit first and were relatively surprised. So if you told people on Thursday Naples is going to get slammed, they're going to say, no, it's really on the east side. Ends up by the weekend. Yeah, by the weekend, it ends up being Naples.
Several of our reporters that were down there in South Florida over the weekend, I was watching the coverage, and they were comparing it to Hurricane Harvey that they had all just been through. Mm-hmm. And they were saying, thankfully, this was not nearly as bad, and it was quick moving. So it didn't, Harvey just sat there forever and pounded
back a couple of times.
Well, the hurricane force winds were much stronger. This was one of the strongest hurricanes of all time, but Harvey just went out and stopped over Texas.
So Harvey was more about water.
It was all about the water.
About wind.
The rain became the flood, became the surge.
So, go ahead, Steve.
Meanwhile, in Palm Beach County on the East Coast, Deputy Danny Cunningham saved an American flag battered by the hurricane, claiming he just couldn't bear to watch it get blown apart. So what did he do? He got out of his car and he did the best he could.
Oh, that's great.
So we saw a lot of the water retreat, and when the water retreated, it exposed a lot of sea animals, one of which was a manatee who was stranded by Hurricane Irma after the water got sucked to sea. The rescuers quickly sprung into action despite the rain and winds. They threw tarps on it, dragging it to deeper waters, so I guess the manatee lives.
Isn't that great? They're actually, and there was another manatee there, too, that they thought wasn't living because they said it wasn't breathing.
Well, they
ended up dragging both of them over to the water, and they both swam away. So thankfully, they were both still alive.
It was a crazy situation there in Sarasota Bay because of the super low pressure, the water just disappeared, and it exposed those critters.
You know I love love stories. This is another great love story in camouflage.
There were two National Guard members, and they were supposed to get married. She was gonna wear the big poofy white dress. She had everything situated. She had a cake and all of that. Well, they were deployed. Their bosses said, listen, you're with the Air National Guard. You need to get out there and help the people of Florida. So they said, okay, what should we do? And they were sitting around talking with a bunch of their friends. Someone said, I'll open up these folding chairs, put out these chairs. Someone else said, I have some orange flowers. So they gave her the orange flowers. She didn't wear the dress, and they ended up getting hitched. They got married right then and there on the spot.
Michael Davis and Lauren Dunham are now married. Their families must be disappointed. They planned, they registered, they had the church, they were set, and next thing you know, they got deployed. Their term was, their mantra is, as many is, service before self, including their own marriage. So they do not know how their family's going to react to their marriage in Florida.
He said, I think they'll get over it. He said, we're surrounded by a bunch of our friends. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, but this is going to be a really cool story for our kids.
Absolutely. I bet they have another marriage just when they have the time, because they probably already booked all the stuff. They had the outfits, although in that one, everybody was dressed the same.
His best friend in the Guard happens to be a notary. A notary, is that how you say it? Notary?
Notary public.
And so, he was able to officiate the service for them.
Terrific.
A notary can marry you?
Yes.
Didn't know that.
Wow.
I knew a man who did that, and he would charge like $75 and come on over into my living room, and I'll marry you.
Or maybe it's a justice of the peace.
Right.
I read an article saying he was a notary.
I'll be darned. Suddenly, those people who do my taxes can also...
Maybe it's different in every state.
Maybe. Meanwhile, residents in Tampa still under a mandatory curfew as emergency crews get ready to hit the ground this morning.
So what's the damage assessment as of now? Let's ask Tampa Mayor Bob Buckhorn. He joins us live right now. Good morning to you, Mayor. Thanks for joining us.
You bet. Thanks.
So what's the latest there in Tampa?
Well, we've got all of our crews out there assessing the damage. Our police officers and fire rescue personnel have been on the street since about 2 o'clock. All of those reports are coming to this office behind me. So we're trying to get a feel for what it looks like. We know that there's a lot of limbs down. There's a lot of power outages and telephone poles that are down. There is not much standing water, thankfully, but yet the surge is still ready to come, and we have not hit high tide. So we have people pre-positioned to notify us, but so far it's looking much better than we anticipated.
Mr. Mayor, you know, in New York City, they have these monitors where you can see almost every block from a command center. How is Tampa situated in terms of cameras? What are you able to see from where you are?
We can see an awful lot. As a matter of fact, we installed those. The last time I was with you was during the Republican National Convention. So there are big parts of the city that we can see. But once you get internal to the neighborhoods where the power is out, we have no camera ability. If it's clear, I'm going to get up in a helicopter to assess the damage. We'll be running drones over the city to check which neighborhoods have been impacted. But so far, I really do think that the gods were smiling on us, and we missed a really, really serious storm that could have devastated this city.
Sure. Let's just, now you just have to worry about that storm surge. Bob, before you go, how much of your town is out of juice?
We don't know yet. We do know there are large sections based on eyeballs being laid on those neighborhoods as the police officers move through them. I couldn't give you a percentage. I would have a better feel around daylight. There is a curfew in place, and we want people to stay put for a while until we're able to get in and clear the streets, make sure there's no live wires out there. We want people home as soon as possible, but we also want to be safe.
Well, you've got a very busy day. Thank you very much for spending a couple of minutes with us. The mayor of the great city of Tampa, Bob Buckhorn. Good luck, Bob.
Thank you.
All right, coming up straight ahead. The Trump administration ready to respond and help Florida recover from this monster storm like they did Texas. Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke joins us with a preview of those efforts. A lot will be on his shoulders. Back in a moment.
The White House kicking into high gear to see the state through this latest hurricane disaster.
Joining us right now with more is U.S. Secretary of the Interior and retired Navy SEAL Commander Ryan Zinke. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure this was one of the big topics on the table at Camp David when the president convened his cabinet there over the weekend.
Well, that was a big topic, and leave no neighborhood behind. We have devastation starting with the territories. Virgin Islands got especially hit. And listening earlier about the power, this likely a rebuild. We're not sure that we can repair the power grid in the Virgin Islands. Of course, today we'll look at the assessment of the Keys as it goes up. Fortunately, looks like Tampa and the upper part of Florida was not hit as hard as we thought. But certainly the president's focus is leave no neighborhood behind. And let's not forget about the forest fires out west. Still a lot of communities that are under threat. Very few fires are contained to the point where we can keep our eye off the ball.
Yeah, we see that you're going to be rushing $221 million over to the U.S. Virgin Islands because a lot of them, they were saying over the weekend, they feel kind of ignored, but that's going to change once you get them that money, as well as Puerto Rico. But I also noticed that you're in Shanksville, and you're in Shanksville on 9/11. And before you became congressman and secretary, you were in the military. I'm just curious, Mr. Secretary, where were you on 9/11, and what are your thoughts today, 16 years later?
Well, I was actually a SEAL instructor in 9/11, and I saw when the plane hit, like many Americans, that America is going to change, and we have changed. And you're right, today the Vice President is in Shanksville. We're visiting the Flight 93 National Monument, and I can tell you they're heroes. This is an example of America sticking together. And likely the actions of the passengers and crew of Flight 93 prevented, of probably a strike on the Capitol. We had a joint session in Congress at the time. But they're heroes, and this monument, if you have not seen it, drive out and take a look at it. It's magnificently designed, magnificently done, and it's an example of how public-private partnerships, community, the national park system, all working together to commemorate, I would think, American heroes.
Mr. Secretary, you and the Vice President will be there today. What can we expect? What are you going to be doing there?
Well, today is really a memorial for the 40 passengers. We're gonna talk to the families. They were here. We were here yesterday, dedicating a chime, which 40 chimes. Design of it, shovel, groundbreaking for that portion of the monument. but really reflecting on how great this country is, the sacrifices we've made, and also talking about the change that 9/11 brought to all Americans.
Do you worry 100 years from now someone's going to try to take that memorial down like they're trying to remake our memorials today?
Well, I'm one that believes that we should learn from history, and I think our monuments are part of our country's history. We can learn from it. Since we don't put up statues of Jesus, everyone's going to fall morally short. And I think reflecting on our history, both good and bad, is a powerful statement and part of our DNA. So I'm an advocate of again, learning from our monuments, understanding the period they were made, but also we live in a great country. And monuments are not Republican, Democrat, Independent. The monuments are a tribute to all of us.
And the observances there in Shanksville start just a couple of hours from right now. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for joining us on this September the 11th, 16 years later.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for being there with those families.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Hurricane Irma still pummeling Florida's Gulf Coast this morning. That's where Jeff Flock is live this morning. Jeff, wow, lots of wind.
Yeah, it keeps coming, and this is still Cat 1, and the storm surge keeps coming too. We're not done with this thing yet. Just a minute, we'll take you down to the edge of the Gulf. The storm surge coming in still on the barrier islands. Stay tuned.
We are back right now with the Fox News Alert and the latest on Hurricane Irma. Monster storm climbing up Florida's west coast over the last day after blasting through the Keys about this time yesterday.
Yeah, we haven't really seen much of the Keys as the sun comes up. Damage assessments beginning in some areas as police warn residents to stay inside until they get the all clear.
Jeff Flock picks up our live team coverage. He's in Madeira Beach. Jeff, what's the latest there?
Well, as you can see, we're still getting pretty heavy conditions here. And the scary thing about this, we're on the weak side of the storm, and this is the back side of the storm. It's already past us here, but that means that now it's coming right off the Gulf. We just found this sign here. Look at the sign is down here. I don't know what it says. Ha! Look at that. Strong current. Danger. No joke. This is the storm surge now. Coming in. We weren't getting surge yesterday, and not only weren't we getting surge, we were getting a sucking effect of the water out of the bays and out of this pass that maybe you can't see because it's dark, but all the water got sucked out of it. Well, now, as you can see, that's what they call storm surge. It is now surging back in because we're getting the wind right from the Gulf, right from the west. As the backside of this storm comes through and it counter-rotates, it counterclockwise rotates, now we're getting it right in the face off the Gulf. That's pushing this water, and I don't know, Bob, can you walk over here with me? It's pushing the water through this pass and into the bays. So listen, we're not done with this yet. It's not going to be as catastrophic as it was in the Keys by any means, or even in Naples. But I tell you, we're not done with this storm yet. It's still wailing pretty good, as you can see.
It is indeed. It's still a Category 1. And, Jeff, do they have any estimate now what the storm surge might be? Because they had said it might be 5 or 10 feet, which would be a big problem.
It would be a problem. I don't think we're going to get that intensity because, again, we're on the backside of the storm. But at the same time, as you can see, I don't know, Bob's, you come up. Oh, whoa, that's sand there. I don't know if he can get up here. Can you get up on top of it, Bob? If you can, will you showing me other? Oh, there you are. Sorry. There you go. I got your hand. Okay. Yeah, he's up on his knees. Sorry. But look, here's the surge coming into the rocks here. Now, typically, yesterday, you could see sand out there. Now, you can see water. This is where it typically would be. But we're just now starting to get the surge in here. So where it goes from here, I don't know. As I said, I don't think, Steve, it'll be as intense as if we had gotten a direct hit from this, since this is the backside.
Jeff, what about high tide? Is it already?
Yeah, that's this morning. That's the other factor. I'm glad you brought that up because that is the other factor. We're expecting high tide here between 6 and 9, depending on where exactly you are along the coast in the Tampa Bay area. And just so you know, for those who don't know what Madeira Beach is, this is a barrier island that is off St. Pete, which is, of course, east of Tampa. So Tampa is actually a little bit protected. It's these barrier islands that are going to take the bulk of the crap here.
How did you get there? Is there a bridge?
Yeah, well, there are bridges, and well, you probably can't see it because it's behind me, but there's a bridge that goes from Madeira Beach across to Treasure Island, for those who may know the geography down here. And there are bridges to all of this, and those bridges, even though they cut them off to regular folks, fools like us, they'll let us in. So, yeah, the bridges are open.
The bridges are open, and so is Jeff Flock describing what's going on down there in Madeira Beach in the Tampa St. Pete area.
Right. Jeff, it's okay to put your hood on now. Thank you very much.
He kept trying, but it kept blowing off.
So nice to see that. We all have, everyone knows someone that lives in Florida, our friends and family that are from that area. They all have questions, Janice, about how is this going to affect their houses. One of my best friends lives right there in that area, outside of Clearwater.
And that's why if you live in Florida and there's a lot of very low-lying areas, especially along the West Coast, you have to know your surroundings, right? You have to know where you are on the sea level, if you have a storm surge, or what the flooding is like. Are you near a floodplain? Are you near a river? So that's why it's really important that if you move somewhere, you have to know your surroundings. If you're hit by a hurricane, know your evacuation route. So I just want to show you Tampa. What Jeff was talking about is the backside of this storm. So you can see that outer band that's now pushing into Tampa. So this is onshore flow. Yesterday, we had offshore flow, and we were seeing those pictures of the bay being pushed out, which was fascinating. But now the bay is coming back with these onshore winds. Also, we're getting the push of surge across portions of North Florida now, and the Carolinas and Georgia, where it's very vulnerable. So this is a widespread storm that's going to affect a lot of folks. Also want to make mention not only the surge, which is going to be, the biggest story really out of this storm. I mean, the Keys were completely underwater yesterday, parts of South Florida, especially the southwest side. We're going to continue to see damage reports from there. But the tornado threat is going to be ongoing as well. We saw many tornado reports yesterday all up and down the east coast of Florida. And this is the path of the storm. We'll get another update from the Hurricane Center at 8 o'clock. But you can see it is weakening. It is over land. The reason why we won't get the incredible storm surge totals that we were predicting yesterday is because the storm has moved more inland. If it was more offshore and in that warm water, we'd potentially be seeing higher storm surge totals. Not to say that it's not going to be a big event. It will be. But thankfully, as this storm has moved northward, it has lessened. And now the storm is weakening, which is great news. However, not out of the woods. We've got folks in Florida, close to 5 million people without power. And the tropical storm force winds are going to extend into Georgia, Alabama, even the Tennessee River Valley over the next couple of days, with the potential for flooding. So there's the radar. And you can see, again, the backside of that storm moving into central Florida, including Tampa. We've got the most powerful winds here in North Florida, just heading into Jacksonville. And the center of Florida is looking good right now. But again, you're going to see the backside of those outer bands moving in. Hurricane warnings still in effect for parts of North and Central Florida up towards Georgia. And they have discontinued them, thankfully, for South Florida. But as this storm moves north and westward, we have the tropical storm force winds. And for the first time, I mean, this is historic to see a tropical storm warning for Atlanta, Georgia. In terms of winds, hurricane force winds still potentially could be felt as far south as Fort Myers, and then hurricane force gusts right here. My bad. Tropical storm force winds felt as far south as Fort Myers, but we could see hurricane force gusts certainly for North and Central Florida into Georgia, and then moving into Georgia and Alabama, the potential for tropical storm force gusts on Monday. And then as we get into Tuesday, thankfully, things will diminish. Power outage index, I mean, close to 5 million, over 5 million people in Florida don't have power, but that's going to extend into the southeast as well. So even though the storm is diminishing and weakening, the effects are still going to be so widespread for the next 24 to 48 hours. Back to you, Steve.
And Janice, don't forget how air travel has been disrupted.
Right
now,
most definitely.
These are the airports that are closed in Florida: Fort Lauderdale, Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando, Sanford, which is near Orlando, Sarasota, Tampa, and West Palm Beach.
So all of them, basically.
And, of course, if you've got delays or cancellations in Florida, that's going to impact the rest of the country as
Right. And I don't know who would think they're going to be getting in a plane after what we've been witnessing over the last few days. And hopefully these airlines are not going to charge people when they change their flights.
well. That's why we need to be on top of that, too.
Janice, can you explain something to us? Well, watching this water go out, especially over in Hillsborough, in the Tampa area, what's going on there? We're expecting water coming up, the surge. We're seeing it go the other way.
Right. So these are fascinating, and Twitter was overtaken by these images. Our own Jillian Mealy posted this yesterday in the Tampa Bay area. What this was the offshore winds pushing. The winds were so strong as the storm was moving northward. So the offshore winds was pushing this water out into the bay. This is a phenomenon that actually happens in the Great Lakes. It does happen. It's not completely out of the ordinary, but because we had such strong winds, it was pushing it. And I don't like the word sucking. That is not appropriate when it comes to meteorological terms. I know a lot of people are like, well, it was the low pressure that was sucking out the winds. That is not the case. It is just an easy explanation of the offshore winds pushing that water out into the Gulf of Mexico. Now that you've got onshore winds, it's pushing it back, and that's the most dangerous.
It's a reverse surge.
Absolutely.
Just like that.
Nicely
Not
done.
a suck, a surge.
I know, I apologize. That's not meteorologically correct.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, it's more sports-oriented.
It's amazing.
Especially if you think about the Giants last night.
Amazing
Thank
to
you,
see
Janice.
what used to be all water, and now nothing there.
Pushed out to sea.
Yep.
All right, JD, thank you.
All right, meanwhile, Irma's wrath is far from over as it heads north.
America's mayor, as he was dubbed 16 years ago today, Rudy Giuliani, counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, and Governor Rick Scott of Florida will all join us live coming up.
And he ran to the Twin Towers with 60 pounds of gear on his back to help save lives on 9/11. We are keeping firefighter Steven Siller's memory alive with his brother, who is live from Ground Zero. That's next.